Hello everybody, this video is to show you just a little bit about editing and how to finish up this project. If you have not already watched the podcast introduction or the podcast intro video, please watch that one first. There is also a video on creating a podcast logo, saving that and bringing that into WeVideo. Again, this video will show you just a few tips and tricks that will help you in your editing and organizing. First thing I want to show you is that this is my podcast space. I've been starting this on those earlier videos, but I have an introduction and a little applause reel here. Again, if you want to know how to put in applause or other special effects, you'll be able to watch that in the podcast intro video. But I'm going to show you how this starts. Welcome to Mr. Young's Amazing Teacher Talk Podcast. This is my applause track. And now I'm ready to put in my real content. Well, I've done some recording. As you make recordings, you will find that they will populate right into your My Media section. So I'm in my My Media area, and these are some of the recordings that I've taken. I do need to say that it takes a second. It takes like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, depending on how long the recording is. So you might make a recording, and it'll be a little delay before you'll actually be able to see them in this space. You'll actually be able to start working with the recordings down here right away, but it takes a little bit for them to render and be able to be used as files. But once you do find your editable or your files up here and you want to edit them, the first thing that I suggest doing is organizing them. They give them a name of the actual time that you took it and took the recording. That's not very helpful to me. This one right here. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, you can click subscribe. We always appreciate that. And come back again next time. We'll have a new episode every week. So again, this is my ending. This is my outro, they call it. Instead of an intro, this is my outro. So that's what I'm going to call it. I can do a right click, rename, and I'll name it outro. Now I can see that, and I know exactly what clip I'm dealing with here. I think this is my main recording. For today's episode, we're going to start with an amazing story. So I'm going to name this my main. You can name your files the way you want to organize them, but name them something that will make sense to you. So now, after my applause track, I want to bring in my main voiceover. I can put that in. And then I will end with my outro. So I'll put that in right after my main audio. Now, the last thing I want to show you here for editing is something that can be really helpful. So I'm using my preview spot. I'm going to stick it right into that applause reel. For today's episode, we're going to start with an... Do you notice how there was that big long pause before I actually started talking? Well, I can trim that out and make my podcast much more interesting to listen to. Nobody wants to listen to dead air with nothing on it. So I can bring this right to where I want it. I can stop and then click that scissors. Oops, right there. I have to be on this one, sorry. Now I can bring it right to where I want to be and then click the scissors and it will trim it into 2 different audio pieces. So this is still here and this is still there. And now I can just delete that little piece, slide this over, and now I'll start talking right after the applause. For today's episode, we're going to start with an amazing story. Now you can do that the same way, right here at the end after I'm done talking and before my outro. Thanks for listening. That was a big dead space. Again, I can bring this back, click trim, and I can cut out that piece that I don't want to hear. You can play around with it. You can make your podcast as tight and neat as you want to. Feel free to play around, listen a lot, go back. If you ever feel like you've made a mistake, you can also always do Control-Z as the shortcut to undo anything that you've done. The last thing you'll need to do before you save is that you need to bring in that podcast logo. Again, if you have not seen that video, go back to a different video on making your podcast logo and bring it into WeVideo. But once you have it, you just need to drag it down into your video track. And you do want it to be at the beginning, so scroll down to the beginning. I'll put in my podcast logo, and now I can just stretch that across the length of my podcast so that people can be watching that right up here while they listen. Welcome to Mr. Young's Amazing Teacher Talk Podcast. Once you've got your podcast all cut and timed, it looks great, it sounds great, you've got your logo in there, the last thing you need to do is save. To do that, you need to come up here to finish. You're going to give it the name. Podcast 1 is a great name for it, or podcast in your name. Click Set. Now, we do need to send this, just like we did with our All About You, we need to send this to your Google Drive. So make sure you click on Google Drive. It is audio only, and I think I need to scroll down and click Export. Just like the other things that we have done, this takes a little bit to render and be put actually into your Google Drive, but once it's there, you'll be able to go in and put it back into Google Classroom and get this turned in. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing some awesome podcasts.